Started to think about multifamily, and a friend of mine, I said, hey, let's get together, friend, and let's talk about doing multifamily. You can't really fulfill any of the roles or make any assessment about the property unless you have some basic, at least basic knowledge of underwriting.
Communication is the number one thing. If you can just develop a really great relationship that's open and everybody's willing to work together to find solutions to things that come up that are unexpected, it sets the stage for being successful.
On this last deal that just closed, I've probably talked to between 15 and 20 warriors that I met in the last 6 weeks as I did in the 5 years before that almost. We find huge value in it.
Welcome back to Multifamily Rockstars. So as you guys know, this is where we deep dive into our guests' deals, and we give you some practical and actionable items for getting started and really doing your first deal or learning about how to do these deals. And but especially helpful if you're brand new to the business. And I've got my co-host Mark Nagy on with me as usual. Mark, what's up, bud?
Good to see you. Good to be here. Another one for the new year.
Yep. Happy New Year. So today we've got Jay and Tana Boersma on. I'm not going to steal too much of their thunder, but they're in over 300 doors now as warriors. And, they're just a beautiful couple. So I'm excited to hear their story and dig into one of their deals. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So why don't, Jay, if you'd like, why don't you tell us a little bit of your story as it relates to maybe a little background, high level background, and then talk about why real estate and then maybe ultimately why multifamily, because I think you had one property when you got into the group and then now you're over 300. So.
Well, yeah. Okay. So, let's see. So Tana and I met each other in the late 80s at Oklahoma State University. We're both Okies. We went to college there, and then we moved to Arizona to go to graduate school and did that, studied finance. And we ended up soon getting into the residential mortgage lending business. And that interest in that was initially founded by having an interest in real estate but not having any money. So I didn't, as a 25-year-old, didn't think I could do anything in real estate. But I saw residential lending as an opportunity. So I got into that and started doing that. And then Tana joined
What year
me.
was that? What year
That
was
was
that? Sorry.
1990, beginning of 1996.
Long time ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
96. So I did that for 3 years, and then Tana joined me. And right when we met the qualifications to get our own broker's license and start our own company, Tana quit her job and joined me, and we started a mortgage company that quickly turned from a mortgage broker into a mortgage banker. And then we continued to do that right up until the meltdown, which for us happened in early '07. So we had our company. It was about an 8-year-old company that got caught up in that, went down, started another company. So we owned a couple different mortgage companies over a 15-year period that culminated for us 10 years ago. But we've stayed involved in the mortgage industry as loan originators, working a W-2 for a different company. But the interest was always in real estate. My grandpa and my dad were both in real estate, both as developers. It was neither of their primary business, but they were involved as my grandpa was a developer, and my dad has almost my whole life has had rental property. So that's where the interest was. And as we got into the late, I think it was like 2018, and I actually started listening to your podcast, Rod, in late 2018, listened to it for more than a year or right around a year, and then joined the Warrior community in December of 2019, came to the LA event in January of 2020. Then, of course, COVID happened. But also right around that time, or the original thought was, hey, I'm in my late 40s. I'm a salesperson. I chase realtors and builders for referral business and residential lending. I'm not sure I want to do that when I'm 60, but I definitely want to still be working. Started to have the thoughts of passive income and started to think about multifamily. And a friend of mine, I said, hey, let's get together, friend, and let's talk about doing multifamily. He said, let's not get together. We don't need to get together. You need to listen to this podcast. And it was your podcast. So I listened to it for a year, joined the community. And then right away, of course, COVID happened. But also when COVID happened, mortgage rates, which were already low, got even lower.
Mhm.
So we weren't able to implement what we were learning and be as involved in the community as we would have normally been those first couple of years because we were still in residential lending. And those were two of our best years out of 25 years in that
Oh
business.
yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
so
Those
we,
interest rates were insane. I wish they were still here. You want to hear something funny? Just as an aside, I just got to throw this in there. I don't know if you know, in a previous life, I had a huge mortgage company. I had 60 LOs, loan officers. We were mailing 500,000 postcards a week. We had a printing operation, a truckload of, yeah, yeah. Anyway, just as an aside, I'm sure you didn't know that, but we could
I
talk about it
didn't
another time. But yeah.
know.
That's one of my many seminars. One of my many seminars, but I had a lot of fun with it. But this is a lifetime ago. Anyway, please continue.
Well, and so then, so we did buy a multifamily. We bought a sixplex with a partner that is also a warrior in.
Where were you living, and where did you buy?
So we're living in the Phoenix metro area in a
Gotcha.
north eastern suburb called Fountain Hills, and we
Hmm.
bought in a tertiary community that's actually just removed from the metro area down to the south. So it's about an hour and 15 and 20 minutes away from me. It's about 30 or 40 minutes away from my partner. So we bought that. It was a um, what do we call it when we upgrade the property? We upgraded the
Value
property.
add. It was a value
Value
add
add.
deal.
Value add. We
Hmm.
do value adds. And so we had
Right.
to, we bought the property. It was built in this, part of it was built in the 60s, part of it was built in the 80s, I think. We didn't know going in that the city was going to require us to do major landscaping and put in a parking lot. So that was a small step.
The city required that.
The city required it.
Oh yeah,
They did.
I can understand the parking lot. They're anal about having the parking based on the number of units. But please, yeah, okay.
So we did that. We also have had a short-term vacation rental condo on the beach in Mexico for 23 years now. But in 2021, with this same partner, we bought another one of those.
Where
And
in
then
Mexico?
and it's called Puerto Peñasco. It's up in the Sea of Cortez, otherwise known as the Gulf of California. It's the body of water
It's
between
not.
the
It's not the
Baja.
new Gulf of America.
Yeah.
Oh no, no,
Sorry,
not
sorry, I couldn't
I
throw
don't know if
that
they
in. I
get
had
the
to throw
political
that in.
joke. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that was a political joke.
We're probably
Anyway,
going to name it the Gulf of America too. There's probably going to be two Gulf of Americas
Yeah.
sorry,
eventually.
sorry, I couldn't resist. Please
It's
continue.
it's the closest body of water to Phoenix. It's 3.5 hours by driving from the airport. So it's closer
Oh,
than San Diego and closer than the LA.
wow.
So we go there. Anyway, we bought another condo down there in 21. And then in 2022, probably late 2021, we got into escrow on a seller direct deal that the seller was a friend of mine. It was his parents that had owned the property. And he was a buddy that was one of my best friends from the third grade on. And he knew that we had gotten into the multifamily business. And a couple years before, I had just made a remark. I said, we want to buy Cedar Oaks. It was a joke because we were total rookies. I didn't know anything about how to even underwrite or do any of those things yet. So I just was planting that seed. Well, he took it seriously. We got into escrow and closed on that property in March of 22. And
How many
so
units? How many units was that one?
that was 72 units. And so
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, so we took that, I had been involved in coaching for that first year in the Warrior program. And then we were a full year, more than a full year already removed from having been in coaching, but I was in good touch with my coach. And
Mhm.
so the first thing that I did was I called my former coach who was in the Warrior community and said, "Hey, help me with this deal." And he said, "I'd love to." And so he and another Warrior came alongside me and my friend who he and I had joined the Warrior community together. So it was a 4 Warrior GP team on a
Nice.
seller direct deal in that we closed in March of 22, right before the rates went up. And so that was the first kind of bigger multifamily deal that we did.
Congratulations. That's beautiful.
It was fun.
Well, let's jump into the most recent one that you wanted to talk about. I believe it was, I think, well, a year and a half ago now that you guys talked about a different deal. Bring us into that most recent deal, how you closed it, how you found it, how you put the team together. Give us the basics on that one.
Yeah, where is it? How'd you find it? Start there.
Okay, so the most recent deal is in the same market as the last deal I just talked about. It's a tertiary market, Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's my hometown. I was born and raised there. My
Oh,
parents
wow.
live there still. I got a brother and his family who live there. My sister and her family lives there. Oklahoma State is there. Tana and I met at Oklahoma State. So this is in the same community. And we had actually just closed on 96 LIHTC units in July. And this property, this latest deal, came back to us off market in July. And I was
Okay, before
totally,
you go on, explain to my listeners what LIHTC is, please.
okay, so LIHTC is low income tax credit housing.
Hmm.
And what it means is that there is a restriction, there's a cap on rents, and there's also a cap on income. So that was our first one of those. And the only reason I mentioned that mostly is just because timing was not great. And I was setting the stage by telling the rest of the story of the deal that just closed by mentioning that timing was not ideal. We had just come out of a deal that we had done with a single capital source. It was a JV deal. Um, and so that was a great deal, but we weren't really ready. But we had actually been in best and final in June of 23 on this latest deal, and it came back to us off, and the seller decided not to sell back in June of 23. So it came back. Well, our property manager in this market, who was also born and raised in Stillwater, Oklahoma, he was our property manager, and his father actually developed this latest deal. It's called Bricktown. So his dad developed the property, built it in 1972, and this partner Howard is super active in the market. We wanted to collaborate, so we did. So we dove into it, knowing that we really probably didn't have our capital necessarily as well organized as we should have going in. And there's some story around that. Maybe not a full scale seminar, but we're still dealing with that. That property closed, I think, on the 11th of December, and we're still raising. So,
Okay. And so let me explain that for a second. So what'll happen sometimes, guys, is you'll close on a deal and you haven't raised all the money yet. Let's say that you've got a CapEx budget that you're raising. Let's say you've got operating reserves that you're raising. And maybe you're collecting an acquisition fee that you don't capitalize on or take until you've raised the entire amount that you're going after. So it's not uncommon at all to close on a deal and still be raising money for it. In fact, I did it on my last deal in San Antonio. We raised 12 million and a little bit of it was after closing. So it's not uncommon. So I just wanted to explain what that meant. Okay. So you closed on it. And this is the 124 Class C construction in 1972. Is that right?
that's right. Hmm.
And so and what I'm reading here is that so talk about the CapEx budget on that and what you're planning to do, to fix it up and add value to it.
So the CapEx budget was originally about $800,000, and about half of that was designated for interior CapEx.
Okay.
We've gotten into the property, and the reason there was so little CapEx on the interior is the strategy of the seller had been to make some of the upgrades on an ongoing basis. So they had upgraded the property. There's some units that we wouldn't touch, that we're not planning on touching at all. And then there's some units that are going to get 5 different line items of interior renovation. So it ranges from some that need everything to some that need none. So that was
Give an example of the 5 line items, just so people are tracking you here.
So we're going to do flooring. We're going to do countertops. We're going to reface some of the cabinetry. We're going to do new appliances. And the last one was lighting fixtures, fans
Nice.
and fixtures.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
yeah, so that was the plan. There's been a development since we closed that changes that somewhat. So we closed a month ago, and in the first 2 weeks, we leased 6 units at post-renovation rents without renovating.
Without renovating. So what that's called is classic units. Classic is if they haven't worked on them yet. And so you're rethinking the whole renovation budget at this point. It's like, why spend the money if you're getting the rents that you had anticipated before? Yes.
Exactly. So we're going to test the market. We're going to do the renovation as planned ASAP on some of the units and see if we can add $100 a unit to our previous post-renovation targets.
And so what is your new renovation per unit budget? Forgive me, Mark. What is it per unit?
So per unit, it was around, let's see, it was around between $4,000 and $5,000. And
Okay.
some of
And
them again will require 8,000, right? But some of them won't require anything.
okay. Well, a rule of thumb, you've probably heard me preach this, is you try to get your renovation back in 36 months, ideally. Now you can go longer than that. So if you're getting 100, then ideally you'd spend 3,600, 4,000, something like that. Now I know you're spending a little more than that, but it sounds to me like you're already getting rent bumps underneath that new bump that you're going after. So it looks to me like you're in good shape. What's the exterior work you're doing?
The exterior is we're going to do some work on the parking lot. So we're planning on spending $75,000 to $100,000 in the parking lot just to do the regular upkeep on that. And then we were also planning on, and we're still kind of discussing this as a GP team, but it's got the old Federal Pacific stab lock breaker boxes. And we have raised capital or are raising capital. The initial plan was to replace all those breaker boxes.
Okay.
So
Well, that's always a good thing when you've got old ones like that. One thing I want to mention to you guys, and I don't know if you've pursued this at all, but very often you can get a tow company to handle the striping and even numbering of parking spaces if you're going to do reserved parking spaces, striping and numbering if they get the towing contract. So it's something you may want to look into if you haven't already, but that's something that's not uncommon. We've done it a couple of times and, save a little money after you've resurfaced or re-sluiced or whatever the parking lot.
Thanks, Rod. I never heard of that. That's great.
Yeah. Okay.
And I wanted to touch on one thing real quick that you mentioned that we're actually doing on a couple assets, especially these C-class assets, is scaling back the interior renovations with these tenants that are used to like super cheap units. A lot of the times you don't have to put as much into the interior that you thought to get the rents. We're doing the exact same thing. We over renovated a lot of the units, and every single unit got leased before we even released it. And so we realized, okay, we're probably overdoing it, scale back. And a lot of the money has actually gone to the exterior stuff and making sure the building is still working properly, and less of it's going towards the interior. And sounds like that's happening on your asset as well. And so I think that's just a real golden nugget for people to take away, is when you're buying C-class assets, think about that, of not overdoing the interiors and all the other expenses that are kind of going to come along with a 1972 that's almost 50 years old at this point,
Yeah.
right? So
talk about your going in rents and what you're seeing now as far as even on your classics. You say you're getting your your projected post renovation rents.
Yeah. So the rent bump was only going to be $145 on average anyway, and so we're already getting the targeted rent on both the ones and the two bedrooms. There's some larger twos and some 3-bedroom units that they're in low demand, and so we weren't going to do any. There's not much of an opportunity to raise rent on those, so we weren't going to touch those. But yeah, so the going in rent was, let's see, the target rents was 816. So what is that? 675 or something like that is what.
Yep. That's what you had down on your notes here. So yeah. Okay. So how did you finance the deal? What sort of debt did you put on it? And what did you pay again?
So we paid $7.8 million.
Okay.
About little bit less than $63,000 per door. We did bank financing, which we had done before, specifically to get more leverage to create more return for limited partners.
Okay.
So that we could finance part of the CapEx. So the bank said that they would do up to 80 of acquisition plus CapEx. And
Wow.
we never counted on that. We were underwriting at 75, and then
Okay.
they came back at 70. So that wasn't great, but that was okay. So
Okay.
um, there's a big story
So
around
you got 70% loan to value.
right.
Did they include the CapEx or did they not include it after
They
the
did.
fact?
They did. So we got
Okay.
70
Okay.
of cost plus 70 of CapEx.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So now you're in the asset management phase, which is Tana's bailiwick. So have you stepped in there to start asset managing already, Tana?
Yes, we have. We've had a couple of meetings and we're really just, trying to get through all of the details with the property manager to make sure that we are implementing our plan and
Do
getting
you have a
prepared.
third-party property management company or are you doing it in-house?
We do have a third-party property management company that we've used on other assets, and we have a really great relationship with them. So, we've found that is such a blessing to have a partnership in that and have a team you can trust and rely on. So,
Is the property management company coordinating the CapEx work or do you have someone else handling that?
yes, they will coordinate it for us. We are involved quite a bit. So once we close on an asset, we try to meet with the property management group every week just to stay on track, make sure that we're all on the same page. We'll loosen that up a little bit once we get stabilized, but they're coordinating it for us. So we just have, we're in the loop on everything that's happening, but we let them take the lead. It helps to helps us with managing the work that comes with onboarding.
Talk about some of the metrics that you look at on a weekly basis, just in general. Obviously, when you're doing the CapEx, there's a lot of other things involved because you're looking at, which units are being done. You're monitoring those costs. But talk about some of the other metrics that you evaluate on a weekly basis with your property management company.
Sure. We're, of course, always looking at our vacancies. That's, the number one thing we're talking about and making sure we've got a plan for filling those units. We're looking at our delinquency percentages. It's really important to stay on top of those, especially when you take over a new asset. So we have a whole kind of slew of reporting that we just try to look through and make sure that we're on track in each of our areas.
Well, I'd love to get your opinion because I know we haven't gotten into this too much, but Rod, you always talk about, you say, hey, some property managers are better than others. And maybe Rod, you and I can maybe chime in with our opinions as well. But Tana, in your opinion, when you're buying an asset and then you get into the asset management with that property manager, what are some things that you look for just that lets you know as an indicator that this is going to be a good property manager versus maybe a bad one in the long run?
Yeah, so I think for me specifically, it's communication. Like we've got to have great communication and we have to be able to discuss issues and be able to develop a plan together about how we're going to move down the road. We have an asset in Phoenix that we don't have a great relationship with the property manager. It's just, maybe we're not clicking, whatever the reason, but we're not getting answers to questions very quickly and things like that. So I really feel like communication is the number one thing. If you can just develop a really great relationship that's open and everybody's willing to work together to find solutions to things that come up that are unexpected, then, it sets the stage for being successful.
Let me bring in some other thoughts because you talked about, your occupancy. Obviously, that's a huge metric that you're managing. But, as it relates to occupancy, you want to be evaluating the entire leasing process from marketing all the way through to applications. And so, one of the things you'll look at is, what are we doing for marketing? Are we on apartments.com? Are we on Zillow? Are they doing Facebook marketing? So that's one of the things, are we getting enough bodies in the doorway? How many showings are happening as a result of those bodies in the doorway? How many showings are resulting in applications? How many applications are being approved? How are those applications being screened? So these are all, that's an example on the leasing and marketing side. Then you're also looking at maintenance. How many maintenance work orders do you have open? How long have they been open? So this is, these are some of the metrics that I just want to share with my listeners real quick. And then you're looking at delinquency, obviously. You want to see if they've got a delinquency number. You want to see that number go down as things progress. And then lastly, a big one is renewals. So they should be proactively looking at renewals 3 months in advance, telling you that, if how many have given notice, how many are pending, how many have actually moved, how many are, have signed renewals. So those are some of the metrics that we look at, on a weekly basis as well. It's great that you've got a great relationship. So maybe you don't have to be quite as on it with this management company if they've really got their stuff together. But I just wanted to elaborate more on some of the things that you're going to look at as an asset manager.
And I'll add in one more thing as well is accountability on all those metrics as well is what I've noticed is if they're not hitting those metrics, do they come to you and just make an excuse and say, oh, it's somebody else's fault? Or do they come to you with a solution and say, okay, here's what we're going to do and here's why? And a lot of things with software and things like that can be automated, like AppFolio with the maintenance, like what Rod just mentioned, the tenants can give, up to 5 stars or whatever. And those are things we track with our property managers. And so those are all things you want to hold your property manager accountable for. Now, one thing I do want to mention, because we don't have couples on here very often, is how do you guys operate between yourselves? Do you work kind of as a team and do similar superpowers and say, hey, we work as a team? Or do you each kind of take on different roles within your properties?
Great question. And how do you deal with disagreements as well?
Yeah, this part.
Yeah. I would rather that Tana not answer this question. Let me field this question.
Yeah. See where this is going.
I fish a lot.
Yeah.
So, and Tana does a lot of work.
Jay goes fishing and I sit at my desk. No, I'm teasing. So we have we have such a great partnership. We've been married for 32 years. We've been working together for 25 years. So we've had a lot of time to, work through the kinks and figure out who's good at what and how to resolve conflict and how to take a break and all that good stuff. But we're very different in our skill set. I'm, sit at my desk, love to be at my desk, pushing around paperwork, answering emails, tracking things. And Jay's great at relationship building, meeting people, looking for deals, underwriting. So it's good that we have a different skill set, and we also like the skill set that we have. So we kind of each have half a brain, if you will, in the partnership. So
that's fantastic. And that's not. Sometimes it's easier said than done, is to have that kind of a partnership and relationship in where you're working together. I tried it with my ex and forget it. It's not going to happen. But that's beautiful that you were able to do that. Now, have you gotten value out of the Warrior program? Have these deals that you've done since you've joined, have they been with Warriors and so on and so forth? Yes?
So the first deal, well, as I mentioned, it was an all Warrior GP team, including my coach, and so unequivocally yes. But what is super fortunate for us is that now 5 years in, we're finding more value than ever.
No kidding.
Why is that? The whole community. And for example, on this deal that just closed, I've probably talked to between 15 and 20 Warriors that I met during that time. And so just in the last 6 weeks. So I've met as probably and spoken one-on-one and on Zooms and et cetera with Warriors in the last 6 weeks as I did in the 5 years before that almost. So we find huge value in it. I mean, I just was on the Facebook page. I look at the Facebook page almost every day. I think there's 16 or 1700 people there now. It's gone up like 200 or 300 members just in the last few months.
Yeah.
So, and then on this deal, yes, there were warriors, and a couple of warriors were involved and are involved as general partners on this last deal. So,
Fantastic. Fantastic.
yeah.
So it's been good. Well, listen, guy. Well, thank you. So if you're considering possibly getting some guidance, and you can get into the life you want this year rather than 5 years from now, 10 years from now, text the word crush to 72345 to see if the Warrior Program might be able to help you get to where you want to be in life, to get to accomplish what you want, that's how you apply. You just text the word crush to 72345, and we'd love to help you crush it in this business. And the program is extraordinary. And I tell my new warriors, the most successful warriors that I have are the ones that are the most connected in the community. And once we discovered that about 4 years ago, even after you joined, we started doing all sorts of things to facilitate those connections. So, we have our warrior only events. We have every other week we do speed dating, where you can meet warriors in Zoom breakout rooms after our Q&A calls, and making a lot of big improvements to the program. Mark and I were talking about before we let you guys in on this call. We're going to make some more improvements. You're going to see some really cool stuff coming down the pike. So I'm very excited about what's happening there. So again, if you're interested, text crush to 72345, and we'd love to chat with you.
Well, one thing, if we could tease on that real quick, Rod,
Yeah.
I know we were talking about, a weekly thing that we might do is specifically working with underwriting. And I know like if someone were to ask me, what's the number one thing you should learn in this, that would probably be the one thing I say, because it applies to everything, every single role in the business. Now, Jay, I know you guys wrote this on your goals here, is what's the deep dive? And if we could leave the listeners with maybe a practical thing, what did you mean by that? Why did you say underwriting? And how do you think underwriting, learning that applies to, I guess, really everything else in the business?
Well, it's the foundation of everything. You can't really fulfill any of the roles that there might be on a general partnership team, or make any assessment about the property, unless you have some at least basic knowledge of underwriting. So yeah, you have to start there.
Okay.
Totally agree. And again, I think it goes to everything. If you're going to be money raising, you're going to get questions from people that are going to say, okay, well, what does this mean? Right. And you're going to have to understand that. If you're going to be asset managing, you're going to need to understand the expenses, where all those things come from. So I really think it just applies to everything. It sounds like you guys would agree there.
Definitely. Yeah.
Are you guys okay with, if listeners have a question, if they reach out to you?
That'd be great.
Okay. I'll give you your website. It's www.ncresources.us. Fantastic. Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate you coming on the show. You've added some tremendous value. We've gotten into some areas that we don't always get into. So I think the level of detail was really good this time. And I know this was your first interview, so you knocked it out of the park, guys, honestly. So thank you for coming on, and we really appreciate you being here, and look forward to seeing you back on in about a year or so to see where you're at that point.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks. All right. Appreciate it. So one other quick thing. We encounter so many people that are frankly frustrated. They're looking in the mirror and they're frustrated that they haven't been able to escape the rat race. They haven't been able to build cash flow to the point where they're able to have financial and time freedom with their families. And maybe they see other people buying real estate and creating, incredible cash flow, and they think, well, it's just scary. Buying apartments is intimidating. And I get it. But see, that's why we created our Warrior Mentorship program. They're our coaching students, and they've had extraordinary results. My students, I've been teaching about 5 years, and they own upwards of 140,000 units now that we know of, right? And we feel like it's just getting going. Now we're looking to grow this group and really take it to the next level. And honestly believe that the greatest transfer of wealth could be upon us right now with this current economic environment. Everything's going on sale. So we're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework, really like a blueprint or a map, literally step by step. And then they're able to leverage our systems and our incredible network to raise money and equity, to find deals and close those deals and build partnerships, really nationwide. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more in our incredible network and take advantage of the unbelievable opportunities that are upon us, you can apply to my Warrior Mentorship program by texting the word CRUSH to 72345, or you can go to mentorwithrod.com. And what we'll do is we'll set up a call so you can check us out and we can check you out and see if it's a fit. Now, again, you can go to mentorwithrod.com or text the word CRUSH to 72345 to apply, and we will speak soon.